I'm excited. Hello, hello, beautiful humans. I'm totally new to this live thing, so I'm checking out and making sure it's actually showing up on like the Twitters and LinkedIn and that kind of thing. Oh, it is. How exciting and creepy of looking at yourself on Twitter.
Yes,
And
definitely mute your windows.
yes, yes. And thank you, Jere, for joining us today. Please introduce yourself and what you'll be teaching me today.
Yeah, happy to be here. My name is Jere Suikkila. I'm a developer advocate at a company called MapMedIn. I've been a developer professionally, I would say, for 4 years or so, but I've always had that as a hobby. And today I figured we'll take a look at CodeSandbox. That's an online coding environment where it's really easy to get started. You get to do visual stuff with JavaScript, HTML, CSS there, and you see the feedback immediately. So I feel like that's a really great way for beginners to start coding when they get to see the results of what they do.
Yes, thank you. And as a bit of background, because this is how I've met so many of our upcoming guests is I love public speaking, going to events, talking to everyone. And one role that I've really wanted to go into is developer relations, also known as DevRel or developer advocate or developer evangelist. There are a lot of names for the role, and it's different at every company what it does. And you were one of the kind people that talked to me about it first. I'm curious, could you explain to everyone what you do with your role?
Yeah. So in my role, and this really depends on companies, but my role is a lot of technical customer support, helping our customers use our SDKs. So we have a product that software developers use to put indoor maps on websites or applications on mobile, and my job is to help them make sure that they're successful on the technical side of things. So that also involves creating demos for our sales team to show off what our technology can do, and then of course putting content on our developer portal website that is aimed towards the developer audience of our customers, where they can see examples of the basic functionality, what you can do with our products.
Very cool. Thank you. And for something that I've been seeing in the developer relations world is you've also done a bit of marketing. And there's a bit of like so many of that human aspect as well. And I absolutely love that because it's like, cool, you've had to learn how to break it down for people, which I know can be a challenge even for myself. I'm like, I used to work at an API spec company and trying to explain that to my mother is very, very difficult because what is an API? Application programming interface. What?
Yeah.
Two softwares work together. It's great. And then a spec, I'm like, it's your blueprint. Like, think of your blueprint for the house. It's like the blueprint for this application you're going to develop. And yet, you mentioned something as well that I'm like, I don't even know how I would explain that to my mom of what's an SDK.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the questions that I also have to answer quite a lot when I try to explain what I do. So if I was talking to a completely like very non-technical person, someone who can use a computer but not actually doing anything building with it, so I would say an SDK is a library, um, or contained piece of code that helps you do something specific with it. um, So, for example, you want to use, in this case where I work, I always use that as an example. So, you want to put those maps on your websites, but you don't want to build them from scratch.
Hmm.
That's a lot of work. There's a lot of things that go into it. You have to figure out what your data looks like, what is all the data that you need for that, and then how do you render that. So, when you take an SDK, uh, that means some other developer has already done a lot of work to answer a lot of those questions for you, put them in a package, and then that's kind of like an abstraction that hides those details away from you, and then gives you an API that you can work with on a higher level. So you don't need to worry about how are things rendered, how does that happen. You just tell that that's what you want to happen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I remember my time at Stoplight, and I had to talk to a lot of the engineers working on launching a training program and asking every single developer or engineer the difference between an SDK and a API. That was a lot of fun hearing all of the answers, because it's the same with like developer relations. People are like, what? They're all different, mattering on the company, mattering on the team, mattering on what they're working on. And I think that is such a fun part of the technology world. Yet, a giant reason is like we're talking about JavaScript, and you said that we're going to use it on CodeSandbox.
Yep.
Yet, there are so many different coding languages. And while I was on my journey to like go, okay, cool, I'm going to start learning to code just so I can get this job I really want. And people would be like, well, it matters if you're going to be a full stack engineer or not. And I'm like, a what? And so let's see if I can explain this right. So, front end developer or engineer are people that develop the websites, the way make it look pretty kind of thing. And then a backend engineer is who creates the actual product. Is that a good way of explaining the two?
Yeah, I think the front end is well explained. I think some front end engineers though might get offended that their part is not the actual product.
My bad.
Yeah. Because the backend takes care of the data and making sure things that happen that need to happen. A lot of like going to the database, modifying that data, making sure that it's fit to be displayed and all that. So there's a lot of that type of work there. And it depends. It's I think that's also in motion. It changes what things happen in the back end and front end. But if we think about it, really is technically, from technical perspective, I would say front end is what is being run in your browser, and
Okay.
that is definitely the UI and all that stuff. But then nowadays with frameworks like React, a lot of that business logic on what is displayed there, like do you have a message box or something like that, or news feed of items, using Facebook here as an example because they came up with React. Those are very big pieces of code that have a lot of logic in themselves, that are not just about how it looks like, but it's also
Mhm.
about how to deal with that data. And then the backend is what happens on the server side.
Got it. And to put the two together, that's what full stack means, is it's someone that can do front end and back end.
That's right. And there's a lot of these frameworks these days that make it easier to be a full stack developer. Of course, a lot of businesses and startups are popping up, and they want to get started fast. And how do you
Mhm.
do that? Well, you hope that one person can do everything, right? So in order for them to do everything, and they need to have they need to be able to do that fast on every place. So there are like CSS frameworks that make it fast for you to do something beautiful in the front end side. And then there's on the back end side, there are frameworks like Next.js that we can have a look at later or put in the notes somewhere for people to look at. That makes a lot of things easier on the back end side. So you don't have to build everything from scratch. And that comes to the idea of SDKs as well, which is like an abstraction, taking some big piece of code and making it so that the application developer doesn't have to worry about it. In this case, full stack developer doesn't have to be worrying about how to cache something, for example, or things like that are very difficult to do, like difficult problems.
I understood a lot of what you're saying, yet at the same time, if somebody were to ask me, I don't think I'd paraphrase it very well.
Hmm.
So I appreciate that. These are probably questions I'm going to be asking again and again for a while till it sticks. I would say something that does come to mind with frameworks, uh, and see if I explain this one right, is there is a so you have your coding languages, and then you have frameworks that can be put on top of those coding languages to make them faster, like React.
Yeah. So if what happened with React, for example, is that it makes it easier for you to build interactive front-end applications and manage the state and the data that's there, easier than just doing with JavaScript itself, and that's why they exist. And so you kind of trade a little bit of freedom of doing whatever you want to do, however you want to do, for getting some pieces of the puzzle already pre-built for you.
Interesting. Okay. One day we're going to have someone come on and talk about GraphQL, because during the API Days interface conference, when I was emceeing, they were talking about GraphQL, and I was just like, you were speaking another language to me. Literally, like figuratively, like, it is a coding language, but also I just didn't even click what it did. So
Yeah,
one day.
I'll be watching that one for sure. I've touched GraphQL a couple of times, but it's definitely not my expertise. So looking forward to that.
I totally get that. All right. So into the nitty-gritty of JavaScript on CodeSandbox. What are we doing today?
All right, yeah. So like I said, CodeSandbox is like an interactive online coding environment, and one of the best parts of that is that it's out of the box. It's very multiplayer experience.
Okay.
So if you share your screen and start the you go to CodeSandbox.io.
CodeSandbox.
Then we can get started there.
Ooh, pretty. Create sandbox, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Getting
I think
Ooh.
that works. Yeah, and then we want to be signed in. I think, yeah, because this might be a good idea to sign in. I'm not sure if you can
I'll
share.
try. Let's find out. And I'm very excited because we're going to have Rizal from GitHub come on at a time. And so that way we can also learn about GitHub, because that's been a confusing matter for me too.
Yeah, GitHub is one of those things that definitely are very helpful for um, developers to get a hang on very early in their careers now.
Yeah, we're just going to, oh, wait, I need to invite someone. Oh, you're not going to let me. Okay, we'll just exit out.
Yeah, it was just pictures of what you can do. So create a sandbox. So what we actually see here is a whole bunch of different starters. So basically these are templates that have already a little bit of code in them so that we can get
Okay.
started easier. You can see there's React, Apollo, what else do we have? ViewPress, P5.js. So all kinds of different things there that you'll eventually, I'm sure you'll run into most of these things.
Yay.
And definitely go exploring as well. That's part of the fun of being a programmer is once you get more and more into things, you just learn by tinkering with things that you've never touched before. So today though, we want to do vanilla JavaScript. And that starts something for us. If
Maybe.
you it takes a little bit of time. So what's happening, it's
Ooh.
downloading a bunch of files. So there's a share link there. If you could, yeah, this is sharing in terms of now you've built something cool after, and then you're like, hey everybody, look at what I did. So maybe
Okay.
afterwards, we post this on Twitter or whatever we end up putting on this webpage today.
Got it.
um
And talking about Twitter, I'll just send you this link on Twitter really quick.
Yeah, I think I might need another link though from the left side, so I'll explain that. So there is the two people icon on the left side menu.
All right.
So in order for me to join, I would need that link, and then both of us are there. And then because now some other people might see the link as well, I think we'll be in classroom mode, so that you get to decide who can edit it.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So now you can see me there, but if you make me an editor, then I can also edit the code in front of you, so we can do that together in case there's something.
Make editor. Yay.
Yes. All right. Now we're set up. So that was pretty fast. Like now we have a full-blown coding environment here. We have in the left side we have some options, and we can look at the files. We can search the files. Then there's some settings and configuration files that we don't need today, but these are the ways, for example, if you wanted to deploy this somewhere really later, for example, Netlify, which can host JavaScript and HTML projects with just a few button clicks, that would take care of that for you. GitHub, so if we wanted this to be on GitHub so that you can edit from there, do pull requests and all that, that's something to look at in the future as well. And here's the deployment part. So
very cool.
Yeah.
And then just like we were saying earlier, this is where we add new individuals.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's right. So that's kind of the sidebar options there. In the middle, we have our code. So if you open the one with the files in it, you can. That's probably the most helpful one of these. So here, I think the first thing we should do is go through the files and kind of see what's where and what feels familiar to you, what you've seen before, and what you would guess that they do.
Okay. I will say I've seen an index.js, and that's, if I remember correctly, because I did start a JavaScript course, but only a few days in, but the index is what's going to, like if you had different class files, different JS files, you would put them all in the index to call, I think.
Yeah, index is usually what we call the starting or the first file, or where things then go deeper from. So that's where you would import everything else that you're working on, like if you had classes or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm only guessing on styles.css. That's probably where we would put any colors or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Text. Yay.
So here we can see for the HTML body, we put the font family to be sans serif font. That will take the sans serif font of your system default, I think, and then just display that one. System and browser default or something like that, and then display that. Do you want to change the color of that font already? Do you want to see what happens? All right. So just in there and a new line and you write color. No use here, even though I am in Canada. Do have to write it with just the O, and then a colon, and let's see what happens.
Oh, and it even has what they all can be used.
All right, so yeah, there's definitely a lot of default colors that you can use. This is called like IntelliSense, I think is the I don't know if it's the brand name or whatever, but basically it's telling you the options you have here. It's kind of giving you a hint of what you could put there.
And right now, so we're writing in HTML.
Yeah, so this is CSS.
Okay, we're writing in CSS. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Just making sure I'm following along.
Yeah. And CSS is cascading style sheets. And mostly they are used, and end the sentence with a semicolon then at the end. Then
okay, I will once I switch that color because it was really hard to read.
It was a bit too bright. Yeah,
too bright. Let's go we'll go with the dark purple.
Perfect.
And then semicolon. That one.
There you go.
Sweet.
And then hit Command Save on your keyboard, and that saves your changes. You're able to see the next to the file name, the style.css on the top bar. It changes from a circle to an X. So that's how you know you have unsaved changes there.
Okay.
Yeah.
In just in CSS and in if I wanted to, could I create another body and put the color in another section of the body, or would I always have to put it next to other pieces of the body?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now there is only one element on the HTML page, and that's the body. We can go have well, there's a couple of elements, but let's go have a look actually. But definitely you can edit other elements as well. Those are the body there is called a selector, and that defines which elements your styles apply to. And in this case, this is now the HTML file. So if you look at, you can find the body element in here. So this is kind of like a tree of elements. And there's the
Mhm.
body. That's the end tag, and that's the start tag of the body element.
So if we wanted to, we could add a head in the styles.css to change information on that piece of.
Yeah, head is metadata. So that's not
Okay.
displayed or rendered in any way. But
Oh, okay.
maybe we'll add something here and then see how we can change that, how that looks. So underneath, where in the body, under the div, where div id app, so make a new line there, and let's do a button. So start with
Okay.
the open a new tag and write button.
So like this.
Yeah, and then close it, close that, and then you have to end that tag as well, same way as you've done with the div above. Not now that
Oh,
we're in HTML land, we end things with, like you see in the line above.
oh, okay. Like this.
There you go, and it's already suggesting, auto suggesting the option for you.
Okay.
There you go. So we don't see quite anything yet. I think there might be maybe something there, but that's because we don't have any text inside the button. So no,
Okay.
now
I was just gonna try and move it
there,
some, but
maybe click me. Yeah,
oh
there you go.
yay!
And now it
I
appears
want
there.
to move you.
It should move. Yeah,
Oh,
there
there
you
we
go.
go.
Yeah, there is a spot there to move it. All right. So now we've created another element on the page. You save the index.html, and then we can go back into the styles page and see how we could edit. Now, if we wanted to edit that button, how we would edit a button. Now,
So would it be like this?
that would be it.
Okay. Me.
There you go.
Make this one a really annoying color.
Oh yes. Probably want to change the background color as well. So that would be background dash color. Maybe this is dark or.
Oh, okay. I like how this one like helps you guess them.
Yeah. So it knows what the valid values in many places in your code are, and then suggests those valid values for you. And that is very nice. It helps you get started a lot faster. You don't have to be Googling what the valid values or options would be in many situations. So,
Oh, this is so cool.
yeah.
Oh, and you can click back and forth up here too. And then if we wanted to have this hyperlink somewhere, um, I doubt it's going to let me, highlight it and right click for link. How do you actually create a link so it could go somewhere kind of like the here
All right.
does?
Yeah. Let's create something underneath the button then. And it will be called an anchor tag. So that's just an A tag. That's right. I actually forgot that I can edit here as well. Yeah. So
Oh,
in
then
order
you
to
go.
all right. My turn. Okay. So we will add an anchor tag here, and then we'll close it. No, we don't see anything yet. All right. This is a link. Now it's not clickable yet, right? Nothing
Okay.
happens if you click it now. So we need to make sure it's clickable. in order to do that, we give it a href. So where do we want it to link to? So in this case, I can put Google here, but maybe you put your website there or something like that.
Right.
Now it broke. All right, I think that's great. We found our first error message. Ended up with our first error message. So it looks like it wants us to add HTTPS there.
Ah, okay.
So it was kind of weirded out by the path choice we had there. It was interpreting it in a different way. So we wanted to have the HTTPS in the beginning.
And if we go back to that error, is there something that I could have known that that was the error? Because I feel like that's something that I get really confused on is it's, it's not saying it's just a module in path. It doesn't necessarily say, oh, it's because the HTTPS is missing.
Yeah, I think in this case, it's not the perfect error. Like it doesn't really
I'm just going to Google it,
really help with that.
see what, if anything comes up.
Because this is also, I think, very related to the environment that we're working in CodeSandbox.
Okay.
And the way it handles this type of situation. The reason I realized what was going on was because it should not be looking for a module path, and it's looking for something relative to index.html. So I realized that it's trying to find a relative path from our current file. So for example, if we had another HTML file, let's say contact us page, contact us HTML, we could have that here, and that would then be contact us.html. And then we would create one file here, over here on the side panel, contact us HTML.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
I guess in this case it would be source contact us HTML. And then if it's clicked, then that will open that page.
It's making enough sense, yet at the same time, it's definitely going to take some practice.
Yeah, there's a lot of things here that we're looking at right now, and because like you've noticed, there's like CSS, there's HTML, and then we haven't actually even written any JavaScript yet. So we're just kind of looking at elements on this page.
And this is a big reason, and I appreciate your time today, because it's like, where do individuals start? Like when I asked everyone, I was like, hey, what language should I learn first? Yes, the majority said like got to JavaScript, but so many of them were like Python or even CSS. And I'm just like, I I don't know. So I just went with JavaScript since that's one of the more popular ones, and it has so many formats to go with it, with like React and those type of things. So I was like, I'll start with JavaScript. And I learned that a big reason that it's called vanilla is because JavaScript now has so many of the formats that not a lot of people use the vanilla, but if you know the vanilla, you'll probably be able to figure out all of the other flavors we'll go with.
Yeah, so everything else is built on top of that vanilla JavaScript, indeed. And yeah, that is actually that is one of the most difficult questions, because there's so many programming languages, there's so many resources available these days. Where do you get started? And somebody asked me that the other day, and I had to ask them, like, it depends what you're interested in. Like, do you want to make games? Do you want to call some existing APIs and pull some data about movies and then display them on a web page? What is it that you want to do? Because I think one of the most important things about programming is practice and doing it. So in order to practice, I think the easiest way to be motivated is to find something that you really want to do. Like, I need this application or something like that. I want to have this game or whatever it is. Or I want to do data science. I want to figure out, what is the best height level in Minecraft to mine diamonds on.
I didn't even know, I think in the back of my head, yes, I knew you could do all of those things, but I think that's something that's been really hard for myself is I want to learn it to get a job, and because in the API world where I've been working the last year and a half or so, it's like, how do I learn more about APIs to know in what language supports those? But again, as you were asking, it matters where you are and what you want to learn about the APIs, because a lot of individuals that do some data mining but also do backend, it's Python. They're like, that's the best one you should learn. And I'm like, I don't I don't even know what all the options are to know. So, and that's why I really appreciate that we're going through this, because it's like, cool, I'm just going to stick with JavaScript to get one started and understood. And then I will start working on a different language eventually.
Yeah, and definitely once you've learned one language, it's easy to learn other languages afterwards. I would recommend 9 out of 10 times, 8 out of 10 times, I would say start with JavaScript. If a person has no idea where to start from, I would say start with JavaScript. One of the big reasons is that the results are very visual once you start working on it, like on a web page or something. It's very shareable. It runs in your browser, so you can show it off to everybody. There's just so many resources about JavaScript. YouTube, for example, there's so many. You can learn anything about JavaScript online. And with other things like Python, they are a little bit more specialized. And JavaScript has gone from being a language that creates a little bit of interactivity in the browser to something that is now used for full stack applications and everywhere. So it is in the front end in our browsers, but it is also on the server side, where we deal with databases and all that. So it's a good place to get kind of a experience in a language that can be used in a lot of places. And then once you have that, you can kind of like find out what's interesting to you from there. And then if there is a more specialized language that works for that area, you can go there then.
I love that. And something that you mentioned is there's so much content online about this. And I'm like, yes, there is a lot of content about JavaScript, but I'm so stuck on something. And that's a big reason of Teach Jenn Tech was started, because it's like, this gives me an opportunity to ask someone like you or people that are more experienced at it, going, okay, I am really, really stuck here. And all the Googles and all the Stack Overflow and GitHub is just not making sense. Where it's normally just like oh, I didn't think of it in the same logic because I haven't learned that logic yet to where it sinks in. And I think that's a big piece of everyone listening and watching this. Please comment your questions where you got stuck, where you're wanting help, because this is why we're going to have so many different guests from different backgrounds. Like, we're going to have someone on from GraphQL or from GitHub. And I think that's one of the most exciting pieces, is finally, in my mind, finally having the accessibility to people that already know this day in, day out, where watching a ton of YouTube videos, think I spent like 4 hours trying to figure it out, and I still couldn't like figure out a piece of classes. So it was, I so appreciate that you're on today.
Yeah, it does become a problem, kind of like of abundancy, kind of like an analysis paralysis and all that, when you see everything. Like, there's so much, and you're like, so what? I need to learn this specific thing. How do I go about it? What? Because you kind of don't know what you don't know. And you don't know what you need to know in order to know that thing. So for that type of situations, I would recommend something like Free Code Camp, for example. Absolutely brilliant resource. There's so much there. Also in other languages. that kind of has like a curriculum that you can follow and go through the basics concepts of programming, and then how to do that, how to do those things in JavaScript. Because then kind of that kind of teaches you the language you need to understand. 'Cause there's a lot of and I don't talk about the programming language, but kind of the language of
Yeah.
computer science. And then you can understand what do people mean when they talk about loops.
Yeah, and just like how we've been, because the .js is our JavaScript file, right?
That's right.
Okay, so we've literally looked at CSS, HTML, and each of them are so different on how you put something in, on how they're read. And I think that's something that's so beautiful, yet also makes it more complicated because it's like, okay, cool. I kind of understand HTML, yet wait, what? And you
Yeah.
don't even realize you're making these mistakes. So, like we were talking about with the error. And so again, like this is really exciting being able to learn it. What are some things that we can create in our JavaScript file?
Yeah. Now that we've created a couple of elements in the HTML and CSS, I was thinking we could maybe create a couple of links using JavaScript. So first, maybe we make a list of your favorite websites, or maybe let's say your YouTube channel and Twitch and Twitters,
Okay.
and we render links for all of those. What
Okay.
if we do that? Let's see how we could do that from JavaScript.
All right. That means I actually need to know all of my links, but I'm getting there.
All right.
All right. So because this other stuff is done, would I create a different, like go down a few and create a different one, or would I put it all within that semicolon?
All right. So let's go through what's happening here first. So and then we can figure out what we want to do. So the first line, import styles.css. That tells our bundler. Bundler is a special JavaScript program that runs before this is served to us, and it puts everything together. That's the name bundler. It puts everything together. So in this case, it makes sure that our styles are also part of the output. Then on line 3, we tell JavaScript to get the whole document, so the HTML document, and then find an element with an ID of app inside that document.
Okay.
And then we modify that app element's inner HTML to be what's there right now. So if we copy pasted what's inside there right now, the purple text from line 4 to 9, let's actually cut that so that it doesn't stay there, but cut it from there.
Could we
Sorry.
also, just thinking about it, if we
Mhm.
do like these, does it make it into comments? Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay.
It doesn't. In this case, it doesn't. And that would be a comment in JavaScript.
Okay.
However,
But
what?
because it's showing inner HTML, it's not going to work because it's HTML in the purple right here.
Right. The purple is a string.
Okay.
So it's like a string that we're putting in there. But if you cut that out and now go into the index.html page, you notice it disappeared already.
Right.
And then go inside the div ID app that you saw before on line 9. Inside there, leave that, but the tag itself there. So that's between the start of the starting tag and the end tag of that element.
Oh, right
And
here.
paste that there and see what happens.
I'll put
If you save the file, we should.
Is it because we have too many divs?
No. Honestly, this is a very small amount of divs.
Okay.
Once you get using these frameworks, you'll end up with a lot of divs. Let's save this. Oh, okay. I realized what happened. So go back to our index.js still. So this is actually a good exercise. So what we basically did, we moved that HTML into the HTML file, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, this JavaScript file is executed once that index HTML is first rendered. then we execute this piece of code. And this code now says, put empty inside the app.
Okay. So we would have to delete, would we delete this line or delete the inner
I would
dot
do it
inner
like
HTML?
this. And you were wanting to comment something. So now comment the line number 3 and then save that. So that is indeed how you do comments. And now that piece of code is not run and our result is there.
Okay, because we moved it over to where the HTML file was.
Exactly.
Got
So
it.
it was just rendered there using JavaScript. It was the exact same thing, but that was how JavaScript could modify the HTML of an element on that page.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm going back and forth because it's like it's starting to sink in of how we created app, and so it was using app and inserting it there. Okay.
Yeah.
As long as I don't have to recreate that and do something else, I think I'm starting to follow along.
All right. I'll next let's have a look how we create a list of things. So we're gonna make an array in JavaScript. Is that familiar to you
No,
already?
I was working more with, at least as far as I got so far, was constants
Constants. All right.
and not an array yet.
All right. So what kind of constants did you have? You had like numbers and strings and
Just numbers, basically just numbers and a couple colors.
okay. Okay. So an array is also can be a const. And we say favorite websites here. And then we open it with angle brackets. I think they're called angle brackets. I'm not sure. So, and inside here, we do a comma separated list of strings in this case. So maybe you put your websites there now, like Twitch and YouTube links there in those spots. So this is now an array of strings if you think about it. So there's like multiple strings in a list there.
Okay. I'm going and finding the other ones because, of course, I'm like, oh, I don't know what they are off the top of my head.
That's right. And I'll go to our index.html page and I'll add an element there where we will render those. So
I'm grabbing the last two.
that's good. Gives me a little bit of time to think about how we want to do this. As usual, in programming, there's many ways. And we just have to find the way that's the best way for us today. So there's always trade-offs and all that. But
I think that's a big part of the paralysis too, is it's like, if you start learning something and you're like, okay, so this teacher is showing you how to do it, yet they're talking at you because it's, recorded, it's not virtual where you can learn with them. It's very difficult because when you go to Google things, then they're like, oh, you do it this way, this way, this way. And it's not always, at least from a beginner standpoint, I'm just like, I don't know what you just said. I get that it might be a different way, but I don't know why and what it meant compared to like what this specific lesson is talking about.
yeah, and that's I think that's one of the biggest challenges when you're self-learning, is understanding the why. And once you understand the why, then you can figure out, okay, this is the same thing but in a different way because of XYZ. But if you don't really get that why just yet, and it's the most difficult part is to learn why we're doing things a certain way, then it's tough. And that's why I do prefer there are like learning groups and things like that where people learn these things together, like and peer peer learning and all that type of stuff. I would recommend that type of things. Not only does it help you motivate yourself, but it also kind of like gives you that peer support, peer feedback, and all that when you run into that type of questions. Those and it's really hard to Google answers like, why is this done this way? Why did this person on YouTube say this and not the other way
Yes.
that I saw on a website?
And for the newbies that are listening and watching, feel free to hit me up and join me on one of these, because I'll just hopefully hope the guest is okay with it and learn with me, because again, I think it's a great idea what you just said of learning as a group, because this may click with someone else that as they're saying it or as they're asking a question, I'm like, oh, dude, that does click. So I really appreciate it. It is something I do have a question though, because when I was learning about JavaScript and the const, it used the squiggly bracket instead of the square bracket. Does that make a
Mhm.
difference?
It does make a difference.
Oh, okay.
So let's look at different types of variables. So we can also have number of websites, and that is now 4. So that's a number variable.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can do websites title, my favorite websites, and this is a string variable. Right. So there's variables are something that you can refer to in many places in your code, so that you don't have to write my favorite websites every time you use that word or that string or this number.
And then
And you can
really
put
quick,
anything in them.
what is it called again? And I know I feel it's like a really simple term where specifically in JavaScript, I don't know if it's in other languages, that you type the first word lowercase and then instead of a space, the second word is capitalized.
I think this is called camel case,
Yes, that's what it's called. Thank you.
and Python uses snake case, for example. So there's different languages have different preferences on
Okay.
this thing.
That is good to know as well.
In most languages doesn't really make a difference. Some languages
Okay.
it does, but yeah,
Okay.
those are kind of conventions that you notice. You have it in languages, but then also when you go into frameworks, the frameworks have their own conventions about certain things. Not necessarily how you capitalize things, but maybe sometimes even about that. So, for example,
Okay.
React components usually start with a with a capital letter.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, you were asking about squigglies, so maybe I'll show that quickly. So here's an object that holds more than one variable inside of it. And I think now is a good time to actually figure out what is a console.
Mm-hmm.
So while we're programming, it's sometimes hard to see what is inside which variables and where. So one way of doing debugging and understanding what's going on in your code is to do console log statements. So logging out what's happening in your code. So if you look at underneath the white part of the page where you can see the web page, it says console, and it has a few notifications there for you.
Let's see.
So there we go, and click that open. Clear those ones out of there. Those are again related to the environment earlier when we had trouble with the link. So you can clear them from the stop. Is that like a stop sign or something next to where it says filter?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
There we go.
Yeah.
And then the problems are, this was another thing that kept coming up of it's not assigned a value, but never used.
Yeah. Is that something that's kind of a clear message? or
It took a lot of Googles,
okay.
and what I came up with is what was it called? Log dot like guest. Uh,
Console.
oh,
All right.
yeah.
So write console.log, and that is
Um,
a function call. Console. Let me jump in here. Console. So
oh, okay.
that's how we refer
Console.log.
to that, console.log, and then
And then
we
it was like,
yeah, there you go.
yeah,
Let me take those.
guest.
There you go.
And
So
so it got rid of the one that's for guest. But I guess what I don't understand is when during the lesson that I was taking, it was like at the very beginning, the like favorite websites, you could still look the right click and inspect it and see it. Yet as time went on, those were no longer, it just gave the error of like never used. And I'm like, why was it working and now it's not working?
yeah, I can explain what is it trying to say. I'm not sure what happened there like
Okay.
before. So in this case, the problems area is giving you helpful hints that you don't have to follow. Like nothing breaks if you don't follow. So it's okay that we're not using this variable right now. It's just giving kind of like a hint for us that um, we're doing something that doesn't kind of make sense, right? So we are assigning variable website's title, but then we're not using it anywhere.
Okay.
In this case, now guest is being used because we're at least logging it out. It's not being printed anywhere other than in the console. If you look at that now, instead of the problems, you can see it now has the guest there.
Hmm.
But at least the code now realizes that you're not only declaring a variable, which is what we're doing here on lines 5, 12, 13, and 15. We're declaring variables. So we're saying guest now holds this data.
Got it.
If we just declare that and never use it, why did we declare it? That's basically what it's telling us.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, hey, you know that Microsoft Word used to have that paper clip that told you helpful things back in the day, and then it became
Yeah.
a meme. That's kind of
Yeah.
what's happening here. It's like, hey, I noticed you're
Okay.
doing something, and I'm going to help you a little bit, and that's why we have those yellow squiggly lines under those three variables now. So if you hover over them, you should see the same message there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So much learning. So much learning. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Click into the console underneath the page, so you should be able to see the guest there, just to make sure that everything's working. That's the problems, and then the console. There you go. So now you can see that the guest is there. So when something's not working, it makes sense to try to console log things and see if things are
Okay.
doing what you expect them to.
Got it.
All right. So I created a new element inside the websites. Inside the index.html. So I websites type. I create a couple of new ones there. So let's first put the title in there using JavaScript, and then we'll put the websites underneath that. And I think that could be our goal for the day.
Okay. So would it be something kind of like the document that we did earlier for reading it because it's from HTML?
Yeah. So now we want to hook into the what is already in the HTML, just like we were doing before, with the getElementById and all that, and then the inner HTML.
Okay. So we called it website's title. We would want to do, we're going to find out if I do this right at all. Document, but lowercase.
Yeah.
Okay. Get element by ID websites dot title.
Dash.
dash title.
Yeah.
Title. And then dot inner HTML. Oh, I can click that, make sure it's right, equals. And then I would copy and paste this one down there, or I would put this above that one.
Now we've declared already the variable, right? Now we want to use that variable. So in order to use the value inside that variable, we refer to it with its name, website's title. So that's what you would write here. You just put website's title. So now that is the ID of the element, but we want to refer to the variable on line, is that line 13?
Oh, okay. Yay!
There you go. Awesome. So now we are doing a couple of things here. If we maybe do a little recap and unpack of what's happening. So we're first getting the website's title element from the HTML. And then we are assigning something to the inner HTML. And that's the website's title. So now we're using that variable that we declared earlier. Let's say you don't want the word my in there. How would you go about that? You don't want it to say my favorite websites. You could say Jen's favorite websites, for example.
I believe it's editing line 13 because that's Jen's. Yay.
And see how fast it's already on the other side of your screen. Like immediately when you start typing there, it appears on the right side.
And then, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I said we have a comment on YouTube. Somebody's asking if this is a private class and can I stay or leave? Please do stay.
And you can, ask us questions. See what you want to do. This is definitely something that's open for everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Happy to have you here. That's why we are doing this online on YouTube. We're also on Twitch, right?
Yeah.
So people
I should probably double check and make sure the rest of them don't have comments.
Yeah.
I don't see any on Twitter, and I don't even know on LinkedIn how to look at it.
I don't know about LinkedIn either.
We'll just anyone on LinkedIn maybe find us on Twitter or YouTube to make sure that we are we actually reply to you.
That's right.
Okay, I'm not seeing any comments there either. Yeah. So okay, right. Let us know if you have more questions later on, because we'll be doing this with all sorts of teachers and guests and going through, yes, very basic things right here because I'm a complete noob. Yet as the channel grows, we will be going into more complicated things. What, Abdul, do you have a topic that you're looking to cover?
Yeah, I mean, today we're just getting started. This is the first time, right, for you to do this. So that's why we're looking at CodeSandbox, because it's kind of I love it. I think it's a really great way to get started.
Yes.
Because you immediately see what you're doing, and that is just magical. That I think that is one of the reasons I've always been excited about programming. Like even when I was a little kid, because I was able to see what I was doing. Like something changes. I write a piece of code and something changes. I change a number. Now a color has changed. It's always been very exciting to me to see that visually.
Well, thank you, Abdul, for stopping by to say hi. And if any questions come up on this or future ones, please hit us up and let us know. We love suggestions for topics because this is number one. Now, so if I wanted to do like favorite websites instead of, words. We use document.getElementById for website's title, which is in the HTML, and we're using website title, the constant website titles. So if I go back, I'm going to go back to HTML, and you created one called websites.
Yeah.
That is not a header because H1 is header 1, right? That gives a bigger font, which
Yeah.
is also another thing, y'all. If you'll probably need to go look that up at some point. But those ones I feel like are a little easier to use because Google does, like Google Docs does it, Word Docs do it. So I'm just gonna copy
Yeah.
that entire line, and it's called websites. And
Oh, and something's already there.
yeah, because I didn't delete the item. So now I have to do favorite websites. Different. Oh. So how would I put those line by line instead of next to each other?
Yeah. So let's first look at what was the tag that I used. So that was a UL tag. And if you wanted to know, you see a tag that you've never met before, like who is this? What goes inside here?
Mhm.
Google, of course, is a great resource. But when I Google anything about JavaScript, HTML, or CSS, I look at something called MDN Web Docs. So what I would Google is MDN UL.
What MDN
Yeah,
UL?
yeah, but space between the MDN and UL. Yeah.
Okay.
So MDN is Mozilla Developer Network, and that is a very comprehensive set of documentation about web technologies by Mozilla, creator of the Firefox browser.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
So that explains what is a UL, unordered list element.
Okay.
And inside that, it wants li elements. So if you look at what's inside there underneath
Oh, we need to do li in
sheets,
front of each of them.
yeah,
And it'll show us what it is for HTML and then what it is for CSS.
yeah. So here's
And
some styles. They've applied a little bit of custom styles into this example. That's why there's the
okay.
CSS as well.
Okay, so it's li. So that means up here I would do the li, right?
Let's see. Um,
I don't know. I'll try it. I don't know if it'll work.
that would not work in this case. And it's almost how you would do this in React, but not quite. So that's
Okay.
not going to work. If we think about what's going on here and why it doesn't work, like we talked about before, the why is always useful for future learning. So this is just a JavaScript variable, right?
Okay.
So what we write here is JavaScript, and this is a list of websites. And by default, the way it renders a list of websites or an array in this array of websites, it puts them as strings and then a comma in between them. But we want to do something different. Now, I'm not sure if this is really like a day one lesson thing to teach. I've never tried teaching somebody programming in this way, but let's try. I think you might understand what's kind of happening here when we go about this.
Groovy.
Let's put a little bit of line breaks here, and then let's first put just 0. Let's see what happens.
Oh, it does the first one. Oh.
And then the second one. And the third one. So this is the way we index into an array. So we pick out which element from the array we want. Now, in this case, we want all of them, but we don't want them to be just a comma-separated list.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for us to define how it looks like as a string, we use a method called join. And if we now put comma and a space here, it's not quite what we were looking for, right? But it's getting better. Like you can see something's changing.
Mm-hmm.
However, we wanted there to be li elements. Let me think. I gotta think about. So that would be a simple way to make it into strings. But now we want to we gotta use something called a map. And this defines how each single element is rendered. So instead, we want it to be li. We'll actually use backticks because then we can do something called string concatenation. We can put variables inside here. So let's see if this works now. There we go.
Where is the comma coming from?
So the comma is actually, that's.
Oh, I see it. It's up above.
It's coming from. It's not that. Yeah, that
It's
comma.
not that.
We need that
Oh.
comma there because that's how we
Okay.
define the variable. But it's coming because now we could. Maybe inspect. I can explain why. Because let's see. Let's actually pull this out of here. And we create another variable. This is kind of how you would end up doing debugging very often when you're coding. So you kind of create another variable and you maybe log it out and see what's in there and what's happening there. So const list is now this, and then console.log that list. And then we have to put a list in here as well. Now if you go into the console, you'll see what's there. So what's happening is it's taking each one of these favorite websites that we have in that variable favorite websites, and it's wrapping that in li tags, right?
Okay.
That's fine. That's great. That's almost what we want to do. However, because we are modifying the inner HTML, and if we put a list of things, like this has 4 elements, it still has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3 in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a string. Like HTML itself is just a string. There's no lists in there. It's just a string of elements that are next to each other. So now we join it with nothing in between, or we can do, let's say, a line break in between them. And now we hit save, and the commas are gone. Because let's move this join over here. And now if you look at the console, you see it's rendering something different there. So it's not rendering a list of elements anymore. It's not 0, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, but it's rendering a string that has those list elements in it. And I think that was a lot in once. Maybe we'll unpack and see if you have any questions about this.
I think it's something that I apparently I'm just going to start doing some homework for myself off of all of these, because what we went through definitely does make sense. And I think it's going to be something that is going to be where seeing it multiple times in a row, like seeing it from different people. And that's a big reason why having different guests, I think, is going to be great, because I know for myself, it's like I can hear it from 7 different people, but it's not till the 8th time that I realized my mom was right when she told me when I was like 6. And it's the type of thing that hearing it just repetitively, I will say that I followed along Probably until we made it pretty. And I'm like, but it makes enough sense that I think if I were to start my own project, I could do like my favorite as homework for myself. I will do my favorite podcasts and list them out and share that as my live learning as a follow up on this one, because it's definitely something that I feel like is going to take some practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And we already went, like I said, this is not day one thing that usually gets taught, I think, when you start learning. So I think we're going really far here.
Oh,
So
yeah, Abdul has a question. So the map method will return on array and then we'll join all the elements in one string using the join method.
yeah, that is a very succinct way of putting what's happening. So you could actually look at what MDN says about JavaScript map. I think that is the best way you can get a little bit more into it. So there's search there. Map goes through an array, and then we can modify each element of that array, and then it returns the modified version. So that's why it still was an array. We went through an array. We went through each element of that array. We did something to each element. So we wrapped it in the li tags on both sides. And this is not what we're looking for, though.
Yeah, I looked for map and it didn't have it. So I'm just going to go back
to...
write array.map.
Because
it is a function on the array prototype. Array.prototype.map. So if you go back, there you go. It's the first one now.
Oh, okay. I wasn't even looking at it.
Yeah,
okay, perfect.
This is so popular. It was immediately first one there, and that's why I also decided we should use this, even though it's a first day, because this is one of the basic things that you will be doing with arrays, for
Yay!
example. So, a big thing.
Okay. So, well, I will be working on doing this again, probably on sometime this weekend or on Tuesday, of figuring out how to do everything we just did as using a podcast list. Yeah. I'm totally going to be cheating and using our code again, but it's definitely something that needs practice. And you did teach me a lot. So like, let's see if I can recap it well. We started with CodeSandbox.io because it allows you to code and then you can see it on the right side. So it gives us an instant visual. Where something like, is it called Visual Studio? What people call VS? Yeah, that VS one Code, doesn't always give you the instant view. You have to actually have it open in the browser.
Yeah, you have to have it open in the browser, and that's a little bit extra on top of this.
And if we just for kicks and giggles, so people see the difference, and I really appreciate what we did from using the CodeSandbox. I was able to see that this is the temporary website of what we're building. So I went typed it into my browser, and I'm able to view it here just like I did it in the other box, but I can go in and inspect it like I was having to do and click console. And then I was able to see it like I had to do with VS, yet this is saving me so much more time.
Yeah.
So,
and this is a really easy way for us to do a multiplayer and on a stream like this. It's possible inside VS Code as well, but I love how easy it is with CodeSandbox.
Definitely. And then, okay, so we went through and on style.cs, we did create a button and we were able to see that we could change it colors. And then on index.html, that is where our HTML lives, unless, the JavaScript file is calling the HTML. But we originally deleted that, but then we recreated it on line 22 and making it so that way we could have the headers and then of Jen's favorite websites, and then also putting it in a regular font with line 26. And the part that I'm going to get little messed up for but I get that we did the document.getElementById.websites.inner.html, and instead of having it be const list, which is where we did all the fanciness of making it look pretty, we could have done favorite websites again, which I'm just gonna copy and paste this really quick to make sure I got this right. We can, it will paste, it just will not look pretty.
Yeah.
So, and that is what I'm going to try on my own, is creating all of this again with it looking pretty, because that is something that is outside of the beginner wheelhouse. And I think that would just be fun to learn and see if I can duplicate it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think you're going to have a Teach Jenn tech website up and running real soon.
Yay! And thank you again for joining us and getting us all started. And for Abdul and everyone else listening, make sure to follow. I'm going to say your name wrong again. Why am I so bad at names? Jere.
Jere.
Thank you, Abdul. And make sure you follow Jere. And we are just starting, but you are welcome to rewatch this stream. We will have more streams next week with different guests. So you might be a little late for here, but make sure to tag us on Twitter or grab us on any of the other comments, and we'll make sure to see if we can get you your answers. And if you do that, please tag a time frame, time code, so that way we can go and see exactly what you were asking about. But we are ending today's, and thank you so much for your time. Jere, is there anything else you wanted to go over before we go?
No, I'm glad you're already thinking of what you want to do next and how you want to go about this. One thing I want to see when you've done this, like, make them links, make them clickable, because we did go through how links look like.
Yeah.
So go for that.
Okay.
That's like a stretch goal right there. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Happy to be here, and looking forward to maybe teaching something else later on your journey, and having people join us and having good chats and figuring out how we can learn together. I think I just have to say, because I'm on YouTube, like and subscribe.
Yes,
Like
and
and
subscribe. And we will eventually be going through Python as well. So give us a few weeks. I'm probably going to be focusing more on JavaScript just to like wrap my head around it. Yet we will definitely be having guests on about Python, because that is such an important language. If you hit either one of us up on Twitter, we may be able to put you in touch with someone that is really good with Python as well, and open to coming on a little sooner rather than later. And our Twitter names, Twitter. Me and Twitter just don't get along. It's hard to say. Our names are linked on our videos too.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.